My wife invited her entire family over to watch as she presented me with divorce papers on my birthday. Surprise, I'm leaving you for someone who isn't a disappointment. Her father laughed, saying, we never thought she'd actually marry someone so beneath her. They had champagne ready to celebrate my devastation. I smiled calmly, signed the papers, and left. Today, exactly 6 months later, she was sleeping in her car outside my house, begging to talk, with frantic please answer, texts flooding my phone. I never thought I'd be typing out something like this. A part of me still can't believe it happened. But here we are. So here's the full story. Fair warning, this is going to be a long one. I turned 34 last Saturday. Not exactly a milestone birthday, but my wife, Julie, soon-to-be ex-wife, told me she had something special planned for the occasion. She'd been weirdly enthusiastic about it the whole week before, constantly on her phone, smiling to herself, and being super secretive. At the time, I thought maybe she was planning a surprise party or something nice. After all, the past few months between us have been tense. Not screaming match tense, but that cold, quiet tension that feels worse sometimes. We had been married for 6 years. I met her in college. She was this gorgeous business major from a rich family, and I was a scholarship kid working 3 jobs to 4 ramen. Classic story, right? Her family never approved of me. Her dad, Bronson, yes, like some villain in an 80s movie, would make little comments about my humble beginnings at every holiday dinner. Her mom would ask, how's that little job of yours going? Even after I got promoted to team lead, they still acted like I was a failure. Julie would post constant Instagram captions, showing off our apartment, which wasn't fancy enough for her family, but was the best we could afford. Meanwhile, I was putting in overtime to save for a house. She'd caption these photos with things like making the best of things or simple living, almost as if we were some charity case. She'd always compare our life to her cousin Nova, who married some hedge fund guy and lived in a mansion. It hurt, but I loved her, so I kept working hard. I kept believing if I just worked harder, got that promotion, things would get better. The last few months had been rough. Julie had been spending more and more time with her family, coming home late from work events, smelling like expensive cologne. She'd get these texts that made her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. I wasn't an idiot. I had suspicions, but I kept telling myself that if I just worked harder, things would improve. Maybe she was just stressed out. I didn't want to face the other possibility, the one I kept pushing away in my mind. So, back to my birthday. I came home from work. It was a regular day, except I had to work on my birthday. Welcome to adulthood, right? The apartment was empty, which was odd. Julie texted me, saying to meet her at her parents' place for the surprise. Already weird, since her parents' house was the last place I want to celebrate anything, but whatever. I figured maybe she was trying to smooth things over with them. I arrived at their mansion in the suburbs, and Julie met me at the door with this strange smile, one that didn't quite reach her eyes. The living room was full of people, her parents, her sister Annabelle, a couple of cousins, and some family friends I recognized from past gatherings. They were all holding champagne glasses, and there was this awkward silence when I walked in. I was confused but tried to smile. Julie looked at me and said, "Todd, we have something special for your birthday." Her dad, Bronson, actually snickered, not laughed, a weird, villainous snicker that sent a chill down my spine. In that moment, I thought maybe they were going to surprise me with something, maybe a car or some extravagant gift. But then Julie pulled out a manila envelope from behind her back. For a split second, I thought maybe it was plane tickets or something nice. But no, she looked me in the eye and said, "Surprise! I'm leaving you for someone who isn't a disappointment." The room went completely silent, except for her dad, who started laughing, full-on loud. I stood there frozen, my mind racing, trying to process what the hell was happening. And then her dad spoke again. We never thought she'd actually marry someone so beneath her. Thank God she finally came to her senses. Julie shoved the envelope into my hands. Divorce papers, already filled out, just waiting for my signature. Her mom popped a bottle of champagne, and they started pouring glasses for everyone. They had planned this whole thing, as some kind of sick celebration. I don't know what they expected from me, maybe for me to cry, beg, or make a scene, but something inside me just hardened. I looked at each of their smug faces, the woman I thought I loved, my family-in-law, and a small part of me realized this was all just a game to them. I signed the papers with a calmness I didn't know I had. I didn't beg, I didn't cry. I smiled. Julie's face fell when she saw my reaction, but I didn't stick around for her pity. I walked out of that house with my head held high. I went home, packed my things, and left. I didn't know where I was going, but I was done. That night, I went to a bar, drank a little too much, and just tried to numb the shock. I could still hear her dad's laughter echoing in my mind. Fast forward to today, 6 months later. My life is better now. I'm doing well at work. I've moved into a new apartment, and I've even started dating someone new, a woman who actually values me for who I am, not my paycheck or my status. It's not perfect, but it's peaceful. Julie, on the other hand, didn't exactly fare well. Turns out, the guy she left me for wasn't quite the upgrade she thought he would be. She thought she'd be living in luxury, but reality hit her hard. She's been scrambling, moving from place to place, trying to make ends meet. And now, 6 months later, she's outside my house, sleeping in her car, begging for me to talk to her. I've received text after text, each one more frantic than the last. Please, Todd, answer me. I was wrong. Please, let's talk. I'm sorry. Part of me wants to feel pity, to feel something for her, but I don't. In fact, I feel a strange kind of peace. It's almost like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. The woman I thought I loved and her family, they never saw me as good enough. But that's their problem, not mine. I'll keep moving forward. I'll keep living my life. And Julie, she can keep begging. But this time, I'm not the one who will be waiting for a response. I had reached a point in my life where I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. Everything felt numb, like I was watching someone else's life unfold before me. The day of the final confrontation with Julie had come, and I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, numb, as if nothing mattered. We were signing divorce papers, something that, just a few months ago, would have sent me into a whirlwind of emotions. But now, nothing, not even anger, just the empty feeling of inevitability. Julie handed me a pen, her smile faltering slightly, probably expecting some emotional reaction. Maybe she was waiting for me to beg or cry. Her father handed me a fancy Mont Blanc pen, the kind that screamed privilege, and I took it without a second thought. As I spread the papers on their pristine white marble countertop, I signed every single line. The only sound in the room was the scratch of my pen against the paper. Not a word was said. No protest, no pleas. Just a quiet tension in the air. The occasional awkward throat clearing. When I finished, I looked at Julie, stared right at her. Thanks for the birthday gift, I said, my voice steady. Best one I've ever received. I let that hang in the air for a moment before I stood up and walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I didn't make a scene. I just left. The silence in that room was deafening as they stood there, speechless, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't break down, didn't fall apart the way they expected. That in itself was almost worth the humiliation I felt. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away. I got into my car and drove. No destination. My mind was a fog of emotions, trying to process everything that had led to this point. Eventually, I found myself at a dive bar, a dirty, dark place where no one knew me. I ordered a whiskey, then another. I stared at my phone, watching the texts come in from Julie. They were frantic at first, confused. She couldn't understand why I wasn't begging her to reconsider. Why didn't you say anything? Are you seriously not going to fight for us? You're just proving my point by running away. I had been numb for so long. But after a few drinks, something changed. The numbness started to wear off, and in its place, a cold, calculated rage began to grow. Not the kind of rage that makes you lash out in the moment. This was the kind of rage that made you step back, assess the situation, and plan your next move with precision. Julie and her family had no idea what they'd just done. They thought I was weak. They thought I'd fall apart at the seams. They had no idea about the secrets I've been collecting over the years, the things I'd seen, the things I'd heard, the things I knew. I had 6 years of marriage to a woman who came from a family that treated people like me, the staff, the help, like they were furniture. I knew more than they realized. The accountant who was always drunk at parties, talking about how to cook the books. The cousin who was sleeping with her sister's husband. The father's business trips that seemed to involve a lot less business and a lot more leisure. That night, I took action. First, I called Larry, my buddy, the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city. If there was anyone who could get me out of this mess with my dignity intact, it was him. Second, I went through Julie's texts and screenshots, pulling everything I could from our shared cloud account, every suspicious conversation, every shady interaction. I saved everything. And third, I made a list of every business contact, every friend, every person who needed to hear my side of the story before Julie could spin her version of events. I didn't go home that night. I crashed at a friend's place. The next morning, my phone was blowing up with texts from Julie. By then, her tone had shifted. It was no longer smug. It was desperate. "Why aren't you responding?" she texted. "What's going on? I thought you'd be begging me to fix things. This isn't how it's supposed to go." By noon, Larry had already filed the counterpapers. I withdrawn my half of our joint accounts, leaving hers untouched, because I wasn't stupid. I rented a storage unit and moved all of my important belongings there, just in case. While she was out at brunch with her family, probably laughing about how devastated I must be, I was already setting things in motion. It's been a week since that moment, and now, as I sit here in an Airbnb, I can see the shift in Julie. She's gone from smug to confused and angry, and now she's frantic. She's calling me constantly, trying to convince me to come back. Her last text read, "This isn't how this was supposed to go." No, Julie, this isn't how any of it was supposed to go. Larry says I'm in a stronger position than she thought. No kids, my name on most of the major assets, and enough evidence to bury her if she tries to fight back. Oh, did I mention that she's been sleeping with her co-worker Ronan for months? That little detail is going to make her claims of disappointment look pretty damn ironic. So that's where I am now, plotting my next steps carefully. The rage is still there, but it's focused now. It's like a fire that's burning hot, but controlled, and it's aimed right at them. They thought I was nothing. They treated me like dirt for years. And now, they have no idea what's coming. Anyone else been through something like this? How did you handle the public humiliation? Right now, I'm walking the line between taking the high road and going full scorched earth. And if I'm being honest, scorched earth is starting to look pretty tempting. Update. Holy crap. I didn't expect my post to blow up like this. My inbox is on fire. Thanks to everyone who reached out with divorce attorney recommendations. You all rock. So, it's been about 3 months since that disastrous birthday party, and some things have happened that I need to share. Buckle up, because the plot has thickened. A few days ago, I was going through our shared cloud storage to grab some photos before Julie could delete anything. That's when I found a folder labeled Work Presentation. Of course, I clicked on it. But what I found inside wasn't work-related at all. It was hundreds of screenshots of text messages between Julie and her co-worker Ronan. Texts going back at least 8 months. The messages were full of pet names, hotel plans, and more emojis than I care to count. They even had selfies from dates where Julie had told me she was working late. Turns out she wasn't exactly analyzing quarterly reports. I forwarded everything to Larry. His response? Christmas came early this year. The guy's a savage, and I'm here for it. That's discovery number 1. But here's the kicker. After the initial shock of everything wore off, I made 3 important decisions that would shape my future. First, I decided I was done with revenge. Sure, the thought of making her regret it all crossed my mind 1,000 times, but I knew staying fixated on getting back at her would only keep me stuck in the past. I needed to move forward. Second, I wasn't going to engage directly with Julie during the divorce process. Larry, my attorney, would handle everything. I had no desire to talk to her, not after what had happened. Let the legal proceedings play out, and I'd keep my distance. Lastly, I was going to start building a new life, quietly and steadily, not just to prove something to Julie, but to prove something to myself. It was time to become someone better, someone stronger. If she ever looked back, I wanted her to see how much I had grown, and I hoped that would sting. I moved out of the apartment we shared. Too many memories. I found a modest month-to-month rental. Nothing fancy, but it had a small balcony where I could actually see the stars at night. The first night I was there, I sat outside with a beer in my hand, looked up at the sky, and realized I hadn't felt peace like that in years. It was a simple moment, but it was everything. I started hitting the gym regularly, not just to get a revenge body, though that definitely crossed my mind, but because I needed somewhere to channel all this anger. I was a mess of emotions, and lifting weights became my outlet. The first week was tough. I could barely lift anything without my arms shaking like noodles. But over time, I started to see real progress. Who knew that all those emotions could be channeled into building biceps? The divorce proceedings have been interesting. Julie, for some reason, thought she was entitled to half of everything, plus alimony. She said she had sacrificed career opportunities for our marriage. Larry actually laughed when he heard this. Apparently, proving those sacrifices was going to be tricky when Julie had spent most of her work hours sending explicit texts to her co-worker instead of, working. The evidence of her affair was our trump card. Julie's family had always prided themselves on being these upstanding, perfect pillars of the community. Her dad, Bronson, was always posting on LinkedIn about family values and integrity in business. So, when the evidence of Julie's affair started to surface, they got very, very agreeable to Larry's terms. The idea of their precious daughter's indiscretions becoming public knowledge during divorce proceedings was enough to make them rethink their position. One particularly weird moment came when I was clearing out the last of my things from the apartment. Julie showed up unexpectedly. It was the first time I'd seen her since that awful birthday confrontation. She looked different. Her hair was a mess, and she was wearing sweatpants, something she never did before. She launched into this whole speech about how she made a mistake, how Ronan wasn't who she thought he was, and how maybe we could talk about reconciliation. I just walked past her with my box of stuff, not even looking at her. I said I'd have my attorney contact hers if she had anything she wanted to discuss. The look on her face, genuinely unable to comprehend that I wasn't falling to my knees, begging for a second chance, was priceless. It was almost comical. So here's where things stand now. The divorce is almost finalized. No alimony for her, thanks to the affair evidence. We're selling the apartment and splitting the proceeds. I'm letting her keep most of the furniture, though I'm starting fresh, and I want to leave that chapter of my life behind. I've reconnected with old friends Julie always hated. Remember Mike? She always said he was a bad influence because he once brought grocery store wine to dinner instead of something fancy. Turns out, Mike is still the same solid dude he always was. We now hang out every week for game nights, and I've been loving it. I've also started the business idea Julie always mocked. It's nothing huge, just customizing vintage furniture, something I've always loved doing. Julie thought it was tacky, but I made my first sale on Etsy last week. The profit was a modest $27 after expenses, but felt like a huge win. It's not about the money. It's about proving to myself that I can do something. Here's where things get interesting, though. Julie's family business, high-end real estate development, has hit some snags. Apparently, they had this major commercial project that just lost its main investor. This happened right after I had lunch with my old college roommate, who, plot twist, now works for that investor's company. I didn't mention anything about Julie's family during lunch. I didn't have to, but when he sent me a LinkedIn request afterward, I accepted. Then, last week, Julie's sister Annabelle reached out to me. Annabelle was the only decent one in that family. She told me that Julie was a wreck and that Ronan had dumped her after her dad tried to pull strings to get him a better position at their company. Apparently, Ronan was only interested in Julie for her family connections. Not a shocker there. Julie's Instagram has gone silent, which is a sharp contrast to the daily posts about her blessed life that she used to share. I haven't heard from her since that one weird encounter at the apartment, and at this point, I don't expect to. As for me, I'm not looking back. I'm just focused on building my own life, and surprisingly, that's been enough. I've been posting occasional updates about my life. Hiking trips, small furniture projects, nights out with friends. Nothing flashy, just me living a normal, happy life. At least, that's how it feels now. But there's a part of me that knows the scars are still there, just under the surface. It's hard to keep the past from creeping in, especially when I get reminders like last night. You see, Julie's best friend accidentally liked one of my photos at 2 a.m. and then quickly unliked it. I saw the notification pop up, and I knew right away, they're still watching. It made me feel something, maybe not exactly anger, but definitely a sharp, bitter feeling. Her best friend hasn't even spoken to me since everything went down. It just felt like a tiny, useless attempt at connection. Like the way you reach out for something just out of reach, even though you know it's never going to work. And then there was last night. Last night was what would have been our anniversary. I wasn't dreading it. I wasn't angry, just reflective. I was sitting on my balcony, scrolling through Twitter, actually feeling pretty okay about everything. Like I'd finally accepted that I had moved on and found a new rhythm in life. But then my phone lit up with a text from Julie. I know you probably hate me, but I can't stop thinking about where we would be if I hadn't ruined everything. I miss your terrible jokes and the way you always made coffee for both of us, even when we were fighting. The apartment feels so empty now. Ronan was a mistake. My family was wrong. I was wrong. Please, can we just talk? I'm not above begging at this point. I stared at that text for a full hour, running through all the possible responses in my head. I typed and deleted about 15 different versions of what I could say. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much pain she caused me, how she shattered everything, how I felt like I'd lost myself in the wreckage of that marriage. But as I stared at the blinking cursor on my screen, I realized I was just tired. I was tired of the pain, tired of the drama. I put the phone down and went to bed without replying. The thing is, 3 months ago, I would have given anything to get a text like that from her. My heart would have leapt at the idea of reconciliation, of working through the mess and maybe, even though I doubted it, finding a way back to the love we had once shared. But now I'm not even sure what I want anymore. The anger I had at her is still there, but it's different. It's less consuming, almost like it's been worn down by time and distance. The wounds are still there, but they don't cut as deep. This morning, I woke up to find she'd sent 5 more messages overnight, each one more desperate than the last. The final one just said, "I'm parked outside your building. Please come down." I couldn't help it. I had to look. I went to the window, and sure enough, there it was, her white Audi, parked in the visitor parking lot. She was just sitting there, looking up at the building, staring at nothing. My first instinct was to go down there and tell her to leave, to put an end to this once and for all. But I didn't. Instead, I closed the blinds, made coffee, and went about my day. There's a part of me that wants to hear what she has to say. I'm curious. But there's another part of me that knows opening that door, even a crack, would undo all the progress I've made. And a small, petty part, one I'm not proud of, wants her to feel exactly what I felt that day at her parents' house. That humiliation, that cold, empty feeling of being thrown away so casually, like nothing. Life's weird, man. 3 months ago, I thought my world was ending. I thought I'd never recover from the way everything fell apart. But now, I'm actually starting to think that whatever comes next might be better than what I had before. The worst is behind me, or at least, I hope it is. I've built a life for myself in a way that feels real. It's not perfect, but it's mine. Final update. I never expected to be writing a 3rd update to this saga, but life keeps throwing curveballs. For those just tuning in, check my post history for the full backstory. Basically, my ex-wife Julie ambushed me with divorce papers at my birthday party, in front of her entire family, who literally popped champagne to celebrate getting rid of me. Classy stuff, right? So, it's been exactly 6 months since that lovely birthday surprise. A lot has changed. I moved out of that month-to-month rental into an actual house. Nothing fancy. Just a small 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood with a yard where I can finally get a dog. More on that later. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago, with surprisingly little drama in the end. Julie's family lawyer folded like a cheap lawn chair once Larry, my lawyer, showed the receipts of the affair. I've been busy with my furniture side hustle, which is doing okay. I'm not quitting my day job anytime soon, but the side business is enough to fund my coffee addiction and pay for streaming services. I've got regular customers now who specifically request my style. It's still weird to think people actually like the stuff Julie used to call tacky garage sale rejects. Anyway, I was having a pretty normal Thursday night. Ordered pizza, binging that new Netflix series everyone's talking about. Honestly, it's mid, but I'm too invested to stop now. When my Ring doorbell notification goes off at like 11:30, I check it thinking it's probably some drunk neighbor who got the wrong house again. But no. Instead, I see Julie's car parked across the street, just sitting there, lights off. At first, I thought maybe she dropped someone off, but the car didn't move for over an hour. So I did what any normal person would do. I ignored it and went to bed. But I couldn't sleep. The thought of her out there, just sitting in the dark, was gnawing at me. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I checked the camera again. Her car was still there. That's when my phone started blowing up with texts. Todd, please. I know you're home. I just need 5 minutes. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Please answer. I've made a horrible mistake. And the kicker, I've been sleeping in my car for 2 days. I have nowhere else to go. I went to the window, and sure enough, there she was, reclined in the driver's seat of her Audi, the same car her daddy bought her for her 25th birthday. The car she once told me was entry-level, even though it cost more than I made in 6 months. I debated what to do. Part of me, the petty part, wanted to just close the blinds and let her sit there, let her feel the emptiness of her own choices, just like I did that day in her parents' house. But another part of me, the part that still remembers how good things were at one time, I don't know. I don't know what I'd do if I opened that door. What would you do? I wasn't actually planning to be a monster, despite the way everything had unfolded between us. So, when I saw her car parked outside my house, I threw on some sweats and a hoodie and went outside. It was cold, but I wasn't about to let her freeze. The moment I tapped on her window, I could see her reaction, a mixture of embarrassment and disbelief. Her face was rough. Her makeup was smeared, her hair unwashed, and she was wearing what looked like the same clothes from her last Instagram post 3 days ago. I could tell she hadn't been taking care of herself. She fumbled to unlock the door in a hurry, almost falling out of the car in her rush to talk to me. As soon as she opened the door, the smell hit me. It wasn't the kind of stench you'd expect from someone who hasn't showered in a while, but more like stale fast food and the desperation you get from living in your car. The second thing I noticed was how much weight she'd lost. Julie had always been thin, but now she looked almost gaunt. I didn't comment on it, though, as I figured there were more pressing matters. She started rambling immediately, her voice a mix of half crying, half talking a way that didn't make sense at first. It took me a minute to piece things together, but eventually the story came out. Apparently, Ronan, the guy she'd been seeing, wasn't just sleeping with her. He was also funneling confidential information about her family's business to competitors. When her dad found out, he fired Ronan, and in retaliation, Ronan disappeared, taking sensitive data with him. But that wasn't even the worst part. Julie, in her infinite wisdom, had been covering for Ronan at work. She'd been changing reports and skewing numbers to make him look better, all because she was in love. Of course, everything fell apart. Julie's dad finally had enough of her mistakes and cut her off completely. No more job at the family business. No more allowance. No more paid apartment. She was suddenly left with nothing. For weeks, she had been couch surfing with friends, but even that ran out. Her last roommate had kicked her out for not paying rent, and now here she was, sleeping in her car outside my house as a last resort. I couldn't help but ask why she hadn't gone to her parents' house. That's when she dropped the bomb. Her dad, Bronson, the head of their family business, was under investigation for financial misconduct. the same shady stuff Ronan had exposed. Turns out, the mighty Bronson had been cutting corners and cooking the books for years. Their assets were frozen temporarily, and they had to downsize while the investigation was ongoing. Karma had come full circle, and it couldn't have been more perfect. I couldn't just leave her out in the cold, so I invited her inside, not because I was even considering taking her back, but because I couldn't stand the thought of her freezing to death on my doorstep. She walked in, and immediately, tears started streaming down her face. This time, it wasn't about the betrayal or the heartbreak, but because she was so overwhelmed by the fact that my place had actual furniture and plants that were still alive. Compared to living in her car, I guess it must have felt like the Ritz. I made coffee while she talked, and as the whole story came pouring out, I realized just how deep she'd gotten into this mess. Her parents had pressured her into the divorce after they found out about Ronan. They convinced her that she could trade up, taking half my assets in the process. They orchestrated that whole embarrassing birthday ambush, with the sole aim of humiliating me into signing the divorce papers quickly. And when Julie finally realized she made a mistake, her pride kept her from admitting it. She actually said, and I quote, "I thought you'd fight for me." That's when I laughed. Not cruelly, but just from the absurdity of it all. Here she was, the one who orchestrated my public humiliation, who served me divorce papers on my birthday. And she expected me to do what? Beg her to stay? Write a heartfelt letter. Confessing that I couldn't live without her? It was ridiculous. I asked her what she wanted from me now. More tears, more pleading, until finally she laid it out. She wanted to try again. She claimed she'd learned her lesson and had grown as a person in the past 6 months. Apparently, she had nowhere else to go, no money, no job prospects. Her expensive degree was useless without her father's connections, and now she was at rock bottom. She thought maybe, just maybe, she could move back in with me while they figured things out. I let her finish her plea, and then I did something that surprised even me. I thanked her for the divorce, for showing me exactly who she and her family were, for forcing me to rebuild my life on my own without the weight of their expectations. The past 6 months have been hard, but strangely liberating. For the first time since college, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what would please her or impress her family. Julie stared at me as if I'd grown a second head. And then came more tears, more bargaining. She promised she'd change, that she'd do whatever it took to make things right. But it was too late. I had moved on, and no amount of apologies or promises could undo what had been done. She never truly appreciated what she had. I'd told her she could crash on my couch for just one night. It was late, and I wasn't about to send anyone off to sleep in their car. But by morning, she needed to figure out her next steps. Steps that didn't involve me. The look of shock on her face was almost comical. I don't think Julie had ever been told no in her life. The next morning, I made breakfast because, well, that's what decent people do. As we were eating, her phone rang. It was her dad. She put on speakerphone, probably a habit, and I heard Bronson's voice for the first time since the birthday party. Gone was a smug, condescending tone. What replaced it was something I hadn't expected, desperation. Their business was barely hanging on. Investors were pulling out, and they needed help from someone with industry connections. Apparently, Julie had mentioned I was doing well, so now he was asking if I would consider meeting with him to discuss potential business opportunities. I nearly choked on my coffee. The same guy who once laughed at me for being beneath his daughter was now practically begging for my help. Julie glanced at me with this strange mix of hope and embarrassment. I told Bronson I wasn't interested in any business deals with him, but I did know someone who might be able to help. Mia, the woman I'd been seeing for the past month. She was brilliant at helping businesses rebuild their reputations. We were just friends, but honestly, it was the healthiest relationship I'd had in years. There was a long pause on the phone, and then Bronson asked for her contact information. I gave it to him, ended the call, and looked at Julie. The realization was dawning on her that not only was I not taking her back, but I'd already moved on. An hour later, she left with a backpack of essentials and an Uber to her sister Annabelle's place, where she was going to stay temporarily. As she was leaving, she asked if I would ever forgive her. I told her I already had, not for her sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger was exhausting. And besides, I had furniture to refinish and a dog to adopt. Speaking of which, meet Max, the three-legged rescue pit bull I adopted last weekend, tax included. He drools on my couch and steals my socks, but he's the best decision I've made in years. So, that's the end of the Julie saga. 6 months ago, I was drowning in champagne and devastation. Now, I'm watching her leave my life for good. Life comes at you fast. I don't know what's next for her. I hope she figures things out, and I hope her family learns something from all of this. But mostly, I'm just looking forward to the things I never got to do when I was trying to fit into their world. Like traveling without worrying about luxury accommodations, making furniture without being told it was embarrassing, and getting a dog that sheds all over the place. To those who followed this crazy story, thank you for the support, the advice, and for occasionally calling me out when I was being a jerk. It helped more than you know. Has anyone else ever come out of a nightmare and realized it was actually the best thing that ever happened to them?